Hi, folks. I'm gonna do another video here, and this video is primarily I'm trying to hang on. Let me go turn on the light. Turn on some lights here so that y'all can see my pretty face. Um, uh, so I just want to do another video here to gather some thoughts about the Vegas incident and sort of um, a kind of new type of false flag incident which seems to have emerged here with the Vegas incident, and from what I've gathered, a lot of the other ones as well. And I was kind of slow personally to come on board with this because I know a lot of people have been saying that like the Sandy Hook and other mass shootings were actually, and other false flags like the Boston bombing, were a different type of false flag, which is a staged event. So I guess that, oh no, hang on. Hi again. Sorry about that interruption. Hope you enjoyed the Miles Davis in the background. I don't know if you could hear that or not, but anyway, so yeah, it seems like people who follow this stuff closely have been pointing out for some time now, and I would highly recommend looking up Oli Demigard. He does great work on this. On what seems to be now a new type of false flag, which is the staged false flag, which it's pretty much the same idea to create fear, to instill fear in a population, and um, for the purpose of promoting an agenda, which is basically, like in the case of Las Vegas, the agenda seems to be very much heightened security measures. I think that it's kind of like they want to, put these, the very on the face of it, I don't know if y'all saw the 4chan posts, where this guy was talking about, and he named a couple of names, being one being Sheldon Adelson, another being Michael Chertoff, another one being James Mirren, but there's some other folks that have done great work on this, exposing this. For example, James Mirren, is he's I'm not very good with details, but he's on some national security advisory board, which basically has to do with recommending infrastructure requirements for security purposes, and he's also the CEO of MGM, or Mandalay Bay. So some other people have done good work on pointing this stuff out, but and a lot of people have done great work on demonstrating the evidence that they're doing these type of simulated type of false flags, which Las Vegas does look to be. I mean, it took me maybe about 2 weeks. Like the first week, I definitely thought personally that this was a real event. People really died, but it took me probably about 2 weeks to go, oh my God, it just really looks like um, it's definitely they are using crisis actors and staged scenes. Like the CNN scene, for example, where these people, where it's I think it's it's called, and hopefully, if you're watching this video, hopefully you've seen that, and hopefully enough people have downloaded it so that they can't go back and erase this later, because they will. But but it was just, I mean, comical and ridiculous. The scene was, it was titled, something like, bleeding victims loaded into pickup trucks, and then you watch the scene. There's no blood anywhere in the scene. It just looks like everybody's kind of standing around casually, and then this guy is like, just comes up, "Oh, I need your pickup truck," and the girl, and the girl's like, "Okay." I mean, it just sounds so scripted, and just, and in the background, there's actually somebody carrying what, if you really look at it closely, what looks to be a dummy in a wheelbarrow, and not even, and like at one point the dummy falls out of the wheelbarrow, and it's not even a whole dummy, it's just legs they had sticking out of a wheelbarrow. It's like, okay, so sorry, it's hard not to laugh at this shit, because it's so outrageously absurd and ridiculous, and just, okay. But I mean, I hope that by now, you've all had a chance to look at some of the evidence, and anybody watching this video, anyway, has. I mean, you can agree or whatever. We can agree to disagree. So far, I've not seen any. All the evidence I've seen suggests that that this was a simulation, or a staged type of event. So I highly recommend go over to BitChute, look up Sane Progressive. Debbie Sane Progressive, in my opinion, has done, who was recently censored here from YouTube, and has been had her videos taken down from Facebook, but she has done what I would consider, is, to me, is the definitive work on this Las Vegas shooting, and many props to her for that, because of, I mean, frankly, a lot of people are just becoming aware of this kind of information, basically just waking up. to it. A lot of people have been aware of it for a long time. We're all kind of at different places. So, um, but anyway, and a lot of people never will wake up. And my observation, it's really the quote smart people who have the hardest time. Um, as in intelligent, more educated type of people who really have the hardest time coming to terms with or grasping. Hang on, I gotta go turn off. Grasping that there basically is, basically a great big ugly ass, coordinated effort by a bunch of psychopaths who are, and interlocking interests that we have come to call the deep state, and that these type of interests actually form kind of the architecture of what you could call the New World Order conspiracy or whatever you want. I mean, it's a real thing, and I think maybe there are still people that are still waking up to this who have been like just want understandably just wanting to stay in their bubble where we all would prefer to believe that our government is there to protect us and keep us safe, and our military, and that's what they're trying to do, and that's what their job is. But it doesn't appear to me, at least, that they are particularly interested in keeping us safe as they are in keeping themselves safe from us. So they don't want us to be able to, yeah, I mean, obviously, if you're maybe if you're most people even on the both on the right and the left are, I think, aware of the fact that there's a great deal of income disparity in this country and in the world, and you can make your and everybody has their own political take and arguments on that, but I'm not going to get into all that right now because I just think it's counterproductive, and that basically we all just need to understand basically the basic facts that this conglomeration of oligarchs or you know New World Order people or whatever, they're basically they're well, that's what they are doing, trying to do is protect themselves from the rest of us, and that is the point why they're doing why they want this security, why they want this increasing surveillance and control and all of this stuff is to protect themselves from us, not to protect us from whatever outside threats that they are constantly ginning up. Like it's always something. There's always all of for all of ever since World War II, or since World War One, it started in World War One really with Germany, and there was so much anti-German sentiment that you look up Edward Bernays if you're not familiar with him. There was a lot of there was a Woodrow Wilson at the time. Actually, just briefly, the story is that Woodrow Wilson, back in World War One, actually ran on a platform of peace and keeping us out of the war, and out of that's Europe's problem, and basically the U.S. population was pacifist. We did not want anything to do with it. And is it for altruistic reasons all the time? No, it's not always. It's sometimes it's just for selfish reasons. It's like is it that everybody in the U.S. is, pro-peace and, a bunch of hippies? Probably not necessarily. It's just that, uh, it was very much a lot of the reasons people don't want to go fight today because they don't want to send their kids over there, or, they want to. Anyway, the population was um, very pacifist, and Woodrow Wilson was very distraught because he very much believed in. Because I basically think he was a globalist, basically, what we would nowadays call a globalist. Woodrow Wilson was, that's what he was. But I don't know if we had that nomenclature at the time, but at any rate, um, he was uh, availed himself of the services of one Edward Bernays, who was the nephew of Sigmund Freud, and he took and applied his uncle's ideas and I think probably some of his own to basically invent what we now know as propaganda. And he managed to, through his subtle propaganda, managed to turn a pacifist U.S. population into a rabidly anti-German population that was ready to go, you know, waste Germany. And then, you can look this stuff up, but I believe that there probably was also another type of false flag that got us into that war as well, where a U.S. passenger ship was destroyed. I'm not too sure on this, so please. I am not very good with details, okay? So just bear with me. But, so basically, here's the thing. Fast forward to today. How did I get off on this tangent? I don't know how to segue back into my original train of thought here. So, this stuff has been going on for a long time. This, basically, this what we would call the New World Order, or type of events that we're seeing these elites moving to consolidate more and more wealth and power into fewer and fewer hands, and then basically taking and using a combination of psyops and different kinds of engineered events to frighten the population into accepting more and more controls on their lives, to where and the point of this stuff is to protect is not to protect us, but to protect themselves from us. So that is the one basic thing I think everybody should understand, whether you are a libertarian, or whether you're a progressive, or whether you're a anarchist or a socialist, or whatever you identify as politically. I think that's one thing that should be able to be understood by everyone, because it's objective, because it's not a conspiracy theory. It's been going on for a long time, and people that we've basically called, kind of labeled as fringe nutcases, have been trying to tell us about it for a long time. And so anyway, hang on a second. you know, right. Oh yeah, I remember. I was basically what I was saying is that at least for that long, we've always had a boogeyman. Since World War I, there's always been some kind of boogeyman to be afraid of. In World War I through World War II, the boogeyman was Germany, and now, after World War II, the boogeyman was Russia, the Soviet Union, the communist threat, which is, the Democrats have, and the Republicans alike have now, resurrected that boogeyman for us because, and it's like, and ISIS, and it's like half the time the boogeyman is like it's like our frenemy, where it's just absurd. It's like it's horrible because we always have something we're supposed to be afraid of, like for generations, for 100 years, we've had something consistently that we're all supposed to be afraid of or angry at, some threat. But the real threat is has always been these people who are manufacturing the boogeymans, manufacturing the uh, the propaganda and the psyops and the different manipulations in order to manipulate us so that they can steal more and more and more, and basically trick us into building our own prison, and then lock us in a cage where we're their powerless slave and can never get out. So that's always been the real threat, but it's taken people a long time to see this, and I think a lot more people are finally starting to see this, and so I think that it's important. We need to keep talking about it. And again, I say, for the real um, forensic breakdown of this last Las Vegas thing, which is unfortunately probably there is going to be more of this crap. Just please go check out Sane Progressive videos on BitChute, and because she was as I said, removed from YouTube, and check out Oli Demigard's work. This guy is brilliant, and obviously is knows these people's what they're doing, and what they're doing very well, and it's all very kind of almost forensic or scientifically done, and very objective, and anybody looking at it, I think, with would have a difficult time refuting it with any degree of intellectual honesty. I think so. But I guess the real question I wanted to get to with making this video is a big question for me that kind of lingered as I was, I basically knew within 3 minutes that this was probably um, not what they're saying it is. This latest mass shooting in Vegas. Uh, I basically knew, pretty quickly that what they're saying, the story is bogus, and I'm sure like a lot of people probably too, were in that boat, besides me. But like I said, it took me longer to realize that it's not only a false flag, but looks to be a, a type of actually staged false flag. So, or a type of false flag, which would be like a staged. So basically, what was one of the biggest lingering kind of questions for me and sort of a source of cognitive dissonance is because basically my belief, and I think it's a well-founded belief, is is basically that I don't think that the people who are doing this stuff to us, I don't think that they care about, like, human lives do not really factor into their calculations. They don't care. So I had to wonder, well, why would they do it as a simulated event? Because it's certainly not for the purpose or a staged. Why would they stage it? Because it's certainly not for the purpose of because they don't want to kill people. They don't want to harm people or take human lives. I don't think that, because we saw in 9/11 that obviously they that during that event, uh, what was it, like 3,000 people were killed, and then millions of people killed in the ensuing wars over in the Middle East. So they are seriously not concerned about human lives. The human costs of anything is not something that factors into their calculations. So why would they stage it? And that that question kind of created like a sort of cognitive dissonance for me, because and has also kind of created a kind of cognitive dissonance for me all along, um, with all of these other events that people are saying are staged, because I couldn't really explain it to myself why they would do it. Why wouldn't they? Even though some of the evidence did look compelling, I couldn't really explain it to myself why they would do it as a simulated staged event versus as do it as a real event. So, um, and I mean, like, for example, we've seen uh, this thing of in which was the first time I saw it was with the Sandy Hook. I was somewhat personally kind of with the Sandy Hook. It definitely gave me pause with seeing these clear evidence of what looked to be these terrible actors. I mean, they were just terrible, and it's just kind of appalling. Um, these crisis actors, what they're calling crisis actors, and people were saying the same thing about the Boston bombing, that it was staged and that there was crisis actors. So, um, and and how they do this and how it works is all very well explained by Ole Demigard, so I'm not going to go into that. But I am just trying to answer the question: why would they do it this way instead of actually having real victims? And why would they use crisis actors and such? I think one big reason. Pardon me. I think one big reason for that um, when we saw with 9/11. I think, well, it's important to understand, to sort of segue here. I think it's important to understand that these people never do anything for just one reason. They always have a lot when they do a psyop. Whenever they do some kind of deception, it's always has it always has layers of purposes, or multiple purposes. So so why so what are the layers, what are the purposes behind the new kind of false flag attack, which is the staged false flag? using crisis actors and all that kind of crap we're seeing now, which is really just gross and disgusting, in my opinion. Um, I think that um, well, one, like on a practical level, just one big purpose of it, I think, is that, well, it, like if you look at 9/11, like, the fact that 9/11 was a false flag to anybody that um, is even semi awake is just really so obvious. I mean, I think I heard at one time like maybe like 2/3 of the population questions 9/11. Now, anyway, I don't know how it was immediately after, I guess, but, I mean, I think that there were those of us who were probably aware that something was really wrong on 9/11 fairly early on. I don't know. I think it was for me probably at least within the first couple of years I came to the realization that, something is really wrong. It just seems way too convenient for these people that it just so happens that they really wanted a new Pearl Harbor event, and it's in their own think tank papers of people who are heavily involved in the Bush administration, the neocons. It was in their own think tank papers how they just really were chomping at the bit for a new Pearl Harbor type event to galvanize the population, to galvanize the population to get people into their, you know, into acceptance of their foreign policy agenda, which of course I would, we should all know has nothing to do with keeping America safe or anything at all like that. Um, and I hope that I think that most Americans should understand that, should be able to understand that very basic idea that our foreign policy does not have anything to do with defending um, America. When they talk about American national security interests, it's really a euphemism for the interests of Western crony capitalists, crony capitalism or neoliberalism is another kind of word for it. That's really what it's about. So, but why would they do these um, simulated type of false flags, like in contrast to 9/11, which I think was a real um, event where people actually died, like 3,000 people. Well, because one of the big more obvious reasons is, ironically, although that they constantly use the talking point, like we're seeing this with Las Vegas, as their justification for censorship, that people are outraged by the conspiracy theorists saying that, claiming that it was staged and that there were crisis actors, pointing out there were crisis actors, obvious crisis actors, or the evidence that of crisis actors. Um, One of the talking points they're using, like there was an article in the Guardian on this, that it's these terrible, these horrible people, these horrible conspiracy theorists are saying these things. They're horrible people. Don't listen to them. So basically, that that's one of the talking points that they use, is that that it's spurred by outrage from the victims' families and such, that are outraged by the conspiracy theorists. But the irony of that is that in actuality, with 9/11, it was um, there was a lot of pressure from victims' families um, to get the real truth. The victims' families are the ones that they're devastated. Their loved one has been taken from them. Um, their whole illusion, along with all their illusions, that their government has been protecting them, because they know something is wrong. Because it's real for them. Their family member has been taken from them, so they want answers. They know that something is wrong. And they are tend to be the biggest thorn in the side of, like in 9/11. So the victims' families and the families of the first responders and such who were uh, either died on 9/11, died on 9/11, or died of diseases associated with the toxic atmosphere that was created by whatever they used to demolish the buildings on 9/11. Was basically the people who were affected, who were directly impacted by this, who had their loved ones lose their lives, and were the biggest thorn in the side of the people who were actively trying to cover up the crime of that was committed on 9/11, and shield the people who actually committed it, which we all know was not Osama bin Laden and his box cutter army. Okay, so um, uh, that's one reason, is because they don't have to deal with victims, families, and people who are the biggest thorn in the side of these people who do this stuff. Because whenever they do this stuff, I mean, if you're not looking at it carefully, and you're just frightened and like, oh my gosh, this is scary, mass shooters, where are they going to strike next? We don't know. It just could happen anywhere. It's danger lurking around every corner, right? And you're just scared and you're in that state. You're very suggestible, and you will just, because you want to be safe, and the people who are trying to tell you, oh, we're going to try to make you safe, whatever they tell you is what you'll probably believe. But if you just had your world fucking ripped away from you, you're gonna and what the people that are supposed to be keeping you safe are telling you does not make any logical sense. You're gonna be like, what? I want a real answer here. This isn't making sense. I need to know what happened. So that is one reason I think that they are doing simulated false flags, is because they don't want to deal with that, because it really is, these people tend to be relentless and hard to deal with, and so for the criminals who are in power, they really give them a hard time, these victims' families. So it's the complete opposite of what they're saying, that it's the victims' families who are outraged, who are um, angry at the conspiracy theorists for pointing out that these events look to be like that, pointing out the evidence that there's crisis actors and all that. So that's one reason why they would do this. I think another reason is there's the next layer of the onion, so to speak, is slightly even more sinister, I think, which is I think it's part of a psyop, which is kind of like the way I would explain it is that if they can scare people, if they can use this fear and manipulation to scare people, and then use the manipulation to kind of corral people mentally into a sort of false reality that they've constructed, I think that really kind of one reason why they would want to do that is because it actually um, sort of well, one I'll put it this way: there was one thing that was really apparent to me, like on a psychological level, watching all of this video footage and just my with my own internal experience of processing this this event and you know just emotionally because initially as I said I was more or less um, believing that it was a real thing and it really happened, right? But as I started to process it, I started to realize, you know, as I started to look at more information, I started to realize that, well, wait a second, you know, this what what they're showing us here looks really blatantly and poorly staged. Um, and I can't recommend enough Devi Lusignan's Sane Progressive. Go check out her work on exposing this. But I started to, and I thank her for, you know, because personally I wouldn't know probably about this if it wasn't for her. So, you know, she kind of helped wake me up to this aspect of the manipulation, which I might not have otherwise been awoken to. So, um, um, so yeah, this as I was watching the footage and trying to understand what happened, um, there's a sense of palpable fear when you watch these videos. I mean, you know, it's very much like kind of watching a horror movie or something like that, where you know you feel this sense of fear, where you feel constricted and you feel, you know, well, you know, I felt it really strongly in Sandy Hook too. This sense of fear and but as of what I something that I noticed when I was watching this and listening to the especially just listening to the sounds of the machine guns and or the gunfire and just noticing sort of noticing what's my you know my um, what I guess I would call my emotional response to this. And I think a lot of the manipulations have to do with manipulating us on an emotional level. And what I noticed with myself was I had or I had the distinct feeling that it has to do with what we call normalcy bias because it seemed very strange to me right off the bat the way that people were acting and the way that the there was the sound of gunfire, but um, somehow you know it lacked um, the reality of what I would expect to see in a situation, especially when I started to realize, and Saint Progressive again has pointed out that this situation is kind of like a double bluff because they first tell you one lie, like there's two layers of lies. It's like first they tell you the lie that it was a lone actor, but then there's actually multiple um, what if, the evidence of multiple shooters in what looks to be a staged event. So, um, at any rate, when I started to notice the multiple shooters, and I noticed, the lights coming on and shining on the crowd, seeming to help light them up to make it ostensibly easier for the people to kill people. But then, and that I noticed all of that first, and that created this horrible kind of state of fear in me of the malevolence of these people, that they would do something so sinister and awful just in order to um, frighten us into accepting um, heightened national security measures, which are basically to protect themselves from us and to basically enslave us. Um, the the thing that I felt the most strongly was this sense of fear of just the malevolence of this, but and the malevolence of and this has to do with kind of the layers. And I apologize if I'm kind of rambly about this, but what I noticed was that very strong and palpable sense of fear, and I feel like it's kind of what I feel like they want to create. That um, I feel like it isn't just me that's feeling that. I feel like I'm feeling kind of what everyone is feeling in response to this. And everybody has a different reaction to it. Of course, some people start posting memes about gun control and all that stuff, and I understand that, but I disagree with it. But I'm not going to go into that. But that's the most strongest feeling that I felt, was this palpable sense of fear. And but then as I started to notice more that this event has a sort of unreality to it. So, and then, as I continued, as more information continued to come to light, it started to look more and more like, well, this event actually appears to have been simulated. Uh, there doesn't appear to be any evidence of anyone actually being killed. But um, so what I noticed about that was, I think it has to do, like I said, I think it has to do with something that's called normalcy bias. And normalcy bias, if you go look it up on YouTube, let's look it up here. That'll help me with my long-winded explanation. Maybe help me to make it a little bit more shorter. Normalcy bias on Wikipedia. The Wikipedia article, the normalcy bias is a belief people enter when facing a disaster. It causes people to underestimate both the possibility of a disaster and its possible effects, because it causes people to have a bias to believe things will always function the way they normally function. This may result in situations where people fail to adequately prepare on a larger scale. So let me read that sentence again. This may result in situations where people fail to adequately prepare. So, I guess to me, that right there is the key to understanding the psyop of these blatantly and badly staged false flags is normalcy bias, because and it gets a little bit sinister here to me, because, well, like I said, what I noticed was a sense or a feeling of unreality. So I think that's sort of the key to why they're doing it this way, because so why would they want to create a sense of unreality? Because they want to they're trying to basically exploit normalcy bias. What they're basically trying to do, I think, on a deeper level, is condition people to disassociate from dangerous from when they're in a situation where they would normally react to as a dangerous situation, to disassociate from that instinct, from that innate survival instinct, which tends to kick in when they're in dangerous situations. And like that's the one thing I really noticed. Like I started to notice this weird sense of disassociation going on watching all the footage, because I'm hearing all this gunfire, and the whole thing has this really sinister aura about it, but yet I'm not seeing it all has this kind of unreality to it, and I'm not seeing people react to it with the kind of horror that and abject fear that you would expect, these very intense kind of emotions that you would expect. And um, you see some of these terrible crisis actors, and some of them are almost laughing while they're trying to tell you that, I mean, it's really gross. It's really disgusting. But for me, I think that I noticed that effect that it had on me emotionally is it gives this kind of unreality to all of it. So where I think they're trying to, basically, the nature of it is they're trying to condition people to disconnect from that um, part of ourselves that kicks in when we're in a very dangerous situation. Like anybody who is in a situation where they started hearing machine machine gun fire, I would think would um, consider that a dangerous situation. But why would they want to do that? Because, well, here's the thing. It's sort of it's a very it's a and this is to me where it gets a bit dark or sinister, is that essentially, basically, what is what is you know what these people are, they're a kind of predator. They're predators. They are, one of their big deities is represented by an owl, which is a raptor or bird of prey, the Moloch owl or whatever. Um, but they're a different kind of predator. They're a predator that has, most predators in the wild don't have a neocortex. Okay, so but the people that run our system are predators. They're cold predators, like a sharks or crocodiles, or snakes, venomous snakes, or whatever, that type of predator, that's the kind of impulse I think that underlies them and rules them on an underlying level, but yet they are they have many of them are very gifted with high intelligence, high neocortical functioning, and so they're a different kind of, that makes them a different kind of predator. A predator that has a strategic mind, that has a military type of mind. And what would you want to do if you were a predator and you were employing military strategy on your prey? Well, you would want to attack the strength, the biggest strength of your prey. And what is the biggest strength of your prey? Is, well, the biggest strength of any prey animal in the wild is their survival instinct. You know, that part of the fight or flight, you know, that kicks in when they're in a survival situation, that can make them run fast, that can make their senses heightened, um, or you know, that whatever, you know. You see these videos like I saw a video of a jackrabbit mother that was defending her babies from a rattlesnake, and she totally kicked this rattlesnake's butt. I mean, sent it scurrying for for life. You know, totally turned the dynamic around on it. And so these predators that we're dealing with here, the elite people, for lack of a better word, um, they have a but they have a strategic military type of mind, and they don't want to be subjected to um, they don't want to be subjected to the survival struggle that, you know, of their idea of evolution is breaking out of the matrix that, you know, chains us all to the struggle to survive, right? I mean, that's what this is ultimately all about, I think. It's kind of a reaction or a reversal to the the natural, quote, natural order, um, which is, you know, they want to break the chains of, you know, the struggle, the survival struggle. Um, and to do that, they are employing psyops or strategies to, they're attacking the strength of their prey, which is the survival instinct, because they realize that that is the greatest threat to them. So, you know, like the jackrabbit that can fight off a rattlesnake, you know, that is, it's, you know, is a natural predator to its young, and is a very dangerous predator. Um, Pretty tough and, you know, badass, but there's not much that's more tough and badass than angry than an angry mammal mother. You know, you can't. And so anyway, this is what I think that this psyop is about, is they're trying to suppress that in us. They're trying to disconnect us from it. You know, when you are seeing all of this footage and you're hearing the sound, all these sounds of gunfire, and you feel this sinister kind of overlay to it all, but yet you are not seeing the kind of carnage you would expect. You are not seeing the kind of emotional reactions you would expect, etc., etc. Well, that is, I think that's creating a split in where you are disassociating from that. I think that's the effect it's meant to have, is to create a split to where you are disassociating what you would normally recognize as a dangerous situation from the reality of danger, what danger is, to increase your normalcy bias, so that you will not so that you will be retarded in your reaction. And I'm not trying to use the word retarded in the sense of that people normally use it here, but in the sense of slowed down, or hampered in your reaction, um, in your fight or flight survival instinct reaction, because people, when they are triggered, or when that kicks in, people can are capable of doing amazing things. People can fight back in ways you couldn't expect. People can overcome, amazing odds. You hear stories about women, little tiny women lifting cars. I mean, just, you know, it's incredible what the kind of powers that people can summon when they are when that survival instinct kicks in. So I think basically that's the deeper layer of why they're trying to do this, is they're trying to sort of preemptively disable that, because basically they want, what their ideal is to basically program their prey animal, which is us, to just basically haplessly sleepwalk right into their open waiting maw, and then they can close it, and then to them just forever, forever, forever. That's their ideal. I mean, these are really sick people. So they're not human in any real sense of the word. So when people say that, well, it's just the reason why all this stuff is happening on the planet and the New World Order and all that stuff, it's not a conspiracy, it's just human nature. To that I say bullshit. Bullshit. It is not human nature. Human beings are actually horrified, by the sight of, you know, a lot of what happens in nature, and we have to. I mean, that's actually human nature, if you ask me. To be, if you see for example, a video of some of the brutal stuff that happens in nature, to be kind of horrified by it. I mean, nobody taught me to feel that way. Uh, so why? That's human nature, and I think it's more, you know. So why is it? It's I mean, it's not so it's not that's not a adequate explanation to just call it human nature. I don't think I ran across a great quote the other day, about that, pertaining to that, from actually Oli Demigard, uh, who you should go check out. That is, basically, um, what was it? Oh, yes, yes. Man is the missing link between um, animals and humans, right there. So, that is and maybe that was a quote of, it wasn't his quote, but it was a quote that he quoted of somebody else. I can't remember who it was. So, but anyway, sorry this is such a long and scatterbrained video, but I guess this is the kind of videos I know how to make, basically. So, if it's worthwhile to you to get what I'm saying, to watch it all or whatever, and you have enough time to kill, um, you know, I don't know. I don't know. I apologize that it's so long. But anyway, to sum up, um, I really think these folks are part of the psyop is an attack on the survival instinct. They do not want people to they do not want people to wake up. And I think personally to me, to fully wake up is to tap into that untapped power that we all have when when we are in a life threatening such situation, and to, you know, to actually embrace that kind of power as our power to survive and our power to throw off, you know, these people who are basically bullies and cowards. And I really think that's part of what we all need to tap into right now, um, as our great as one of our strengths, because we need, and if because you know that's one thing is if you study their psyops and their strategies, you can understand from that what they attack is what they feel threatened by. Whatever they attack is what they feel threatened by. So whatever they're attacking, look at that, and you can just say, oh, so well, that's the direction we need to go in. You know, like if they're attacking, if they're attacking, you know, people for talking about, if they're censoring people for talking about um, why, how this looks to be a simulated event, well, then that's what we need to talk about. If they're trying to attack um, our or dissociate us from our survival instinct, well, then that's what we need to be strengthening in ourselves and getting in touch with in ourselves and finding out how do we respond, how do we respond to that instinct instead of becoming dissociated from it and going into this state of unreality where we are willing to believe that this ridiculously staged scene of somebody with a dummy and a wheelbarrow that isn't even a whole dummy, that is just a pair of legs, dummy legs, and a wheelbarrow falling out of a wheelbarrow is somehow the true aftermath of what would really be a pretty ghastly, horrific scene that nobody would have any question, um, you know, if it was real. Um, so you know, how do we get more in touch with that instinct to that will help us to survive? You know, help us to know what to do, help us to know how to fight back like a cornered animal or like a mother animal whose babies are being attacked or threatened. Um, because that's what they're attacking, that shows us that that is what we need to actually nurture in ourselves, because that's what they are attacking, because that's what they view as the biggest threat to them. They want us to be disconnected, dissociated from that part of ourselves, because it can potentially fight back against them, because it can potentially throw them off. Because if we're snapped into a state of heightened awareness from our survival instinct, we're not going to fall for all this bullshit. We're not going to, you know, we're not going to buy into it. You know, we're going to have our wits about us. We're going to be our senses will be too keen, and our awareness will be too keen to be able to fool us. Um, you know, I think that they know that, and you know, I mean, for one thing, and you know, that's another reason. I think another layer of it that I skipped. Maybe I think that's the deepest layer, but there's really three layers. It's I think there's also the karmic layer, because it has to do with kind of agreements. Like, and this is another thing that Holy Demigod pointed out, and I kind of touched on in my previous video, which was that basically um, the it's sort of like if they put all of this stuff, which they're doing um, out in the open, and make it so obvious, like they're doing, if they make it that obvious what they're trying to do, or that that they're using crisis actors, um, which is it's kind of like the crisis actor thing. It's becoming like a actual like cottage industry now. It's really weird, but it's a thing. They put up, there's companies that do it, and they put up ads on Craigslist and everything. I mean, and they get these people, and then these people, some of the more fortunate ones, they get to go on talk shows, and they made, this one girl has made $500,000 on her GoFundMe page. It's really sick. But anyway, the nuts and bolts and the anatomy of this entire event has been really well covered by other people. Debbie saying Progressive is a great resource, and again, and like Truth Stream, those guys did a great video. There's one other one, but basically, I think those are the three basic layers. The one layer is just the practical thing of not having to deal with the victims' families who want real answers. Then the karmic thing of, well, if we put this in so much in their faces and they still go along with it, then the karma's on them, because we made it obvious enough that they should have been able to see it. And the other thing is, which is kind of, I think that's arguable to my to to my mind, but you know, maybe they, I don't know. Anyway, I think it's kind of arguable, because there's, I mean, I guess it's kind of like they're trying to find a workaround for sort of the cosmic laws that are, you can't do things to get other people against their will. That's basically what they're all about. And so if we put it, you can't block the evolution of another being against their will, right? So I mean, if you might be allowed to get away with it for a while, but eventually, uh, that there's going to be, the the laws of creation, or whatever, this is my belief, are going to, basically, the bill is going to come due, and so that, and people need to be allowed their evolutionary path, by which I mean spiritual evolution, not Darwinian evolution. So, you know, but I think that they're trying to get around that by basically, scaring people, and then putting them into this traumatized, suggestible state, and then kind of mass hypnotizing us into, to kind of mentally corral us into a false reality, and then basically that false reality, if they're making it so obvious, and putting it so, making it so blatant, that it's kind of like karmic, from a karmic point of view, that we can, from a karmic point of view, like it's an attempt to get around the laws of karma, and put the karma back on us, that, well, if we go along with this blatant obvious manipulation, then really we're at some level agreeing to it. I mean, it's the same thing that they did with like the DNC fraud lawsuit. If you followed that, they basically said, I mean, they basically try to justify it by saying, well, we can go into a back room with cigars if we want and choose the Democratic nominee. I mean, golly, you thought that the rules that we said meant something. You were pretty stupid, and you should have known better because we're a private, we're basically a private corporation, and we have no responsibility to you, the public. And if you're continuing to participate, you're being pretty stupid, and you should know better. And maybe they have a point, but it's not exactly above board. So, but they're trying to find a way to technically fulfill the sort of disclosure requirement. Any contract requires disclosure. So they're trying to say that they've technically fulfilled their disclosure by putting the clues really obviously in your face so that they can basically say that they basically have the right to override you or commandeer or co-opt your destiny or evolutionary path, and make you into their slave or their prey or whatever they want to do with you, um, by putting that karmic burden on you. Well, you chose not to look, so that was your choice. You chose not to see the obvious signs we were putting on in your face, and I think that's a debatable argument or whatever, but also then I think that the third layer is actually, like I said, weakening or attacking our connection to our survival instinct by conditioning us with a greater what's already a real thing, the normalcy bias, by conditioning us not to respond and react to situations of danger, to just kind of um, condition us to basically become the type of prey that is their ideal prey, to basically socially engineer us into what they would consider to be their ideal prey, which is prey that doesn't have that survival instinct, that doesn't fight back, that doesn't, um, you know, can't fight back or run away, that's just too dissociated and disconnected, and that they can basically, get it to basically, like I said, sleepwalk right into their open waiting maw, and you know, and that it won't then react until it's too late, till its jaws are closing on them, and I think that's the situation that we're getting dangerously close to. By the way, we are very dangerous, very very close to being there in that situation. We almost have slept walked right into their waiting jaws, and I think that maybe that this Las Vegas thing might be our last chance to turn back, might be our last chance to wake up and see the predator that we are dealing with here, and and have to feel the very uncomfortable fright that we have wanted to not feel, of going, oh my God, this thing is a big monster, is trying to eat us, you know. Um, so, because it's, I mean, really, well, let's be honest, um, feeling that your survival is threatened and feeling that you're unsafe and isn't really a situation that anybody really wants to be in, isn't a very comfortable type of situation, but it is the situation that we're in, and and you know I think, and I think that our best hope is to wake up to it and realize what the situation we are in is and see it for what it is, both mentally and emotionally and spiritually, because I think that is our part, of. I think that this wouldn't be happening if it wasn't important part of our next evolutionary step. So, you know, if we didn't need this in order to take that, evolutionary step into, you know, what could actually be a much better type of world than the one that we need, then I don't think it would be happening this way. So I think that this is a evolutionary challenge that is valid, and that there is a reason why they are being allowed to perpetrate these things, like on a higher level, probably. But it's still really bad, and I'm not trying to by any means justify what they are doing, but you know, it's I think it's important though that you know I kind of touched on this in my last video, but to realize that that this situation is kind of the universe kind of testing our mettle as humanity, to so to speak. And I think that it's important that we see this so that we can pass the test, and that we don't have to be so that we can throw off these people, and we don't have to be um, you know we don't have to be saddled with this burden that has been like a plague on humanity for all of our history, of these people that are at the top, trying to corral us into servitude, and sort of trying to make us into their, basically like their livestock or whatever. Because like I said in the last video, I think it was, I think we are better than that, and I think that human beings, like I said, I don't think that they qualify as human, and that human beings are actually a higher kind of being than what we've experienced ourselves so far, or high, for lack of a better term, higher. Um, I guess maybe more magical, that we're magical, like kind of we have a magical dimension to ourselves that we're really largely ignorant of, I think. Um, I guess for lack of a better term, magical, I guess. So, at any rate, I think that in order to regain that part of ourselves, or evolve into reconnecting or re-experiencing it, because I think that we at one time in our more ancient history did have more uh, awareness, and it was more a part of our everyday lives, that that this is part of what we need to go through evolutionarily in order to regain that in such a way that maybe we won't then lose it again. So I don't know. These are just kind of my own kind of thoughts, or kind of take on it all, and perspective, that I hope that it helps you to put it in a perspective and maybe see it in a new light. And hopefully anybody watching this will also help to kind of, you know, spur you to, uh, help other people to wake up to this, what's going on, and see it in a, you know, maybe trigger your own thought process to, or just process in general, to kind of help you to find what your own role is in helping humanity, yourself, and helping humanity to evolve to that next, to get to that next place. Because really, that here, what I think is that they can't, the thing is they can't, as much as they want to keep us in this bag of shit that they've kept us in for probably thousands of years, if you're, in my opinion, um, they can't do it unless on some level we agree to it, right? So um, we just have to figure out how to cancel any agreements we may have, and and once we fully embrace our, if basically if we decide we want to collectively evolve as human beings, there's really no way that they can actually stop us. I mean, they might be able to give us a rough time of it or whatever, but you know, they don't have. There's no way that they can actually stop that. And and I think that this, that this Las Vegas thing has really provided, a key um, to what, like I said, what part of that evolution needs to be, which is getting in touch with and maybe integrating that the instinct that we all have that can respond to situations where our life is threatened, either individually or collectively as a whole, and respond appropriately and effectively to curtail or get away from those threats. And I think if we all collectively decide to do that, there's really nothing that they can do about it. And and everybody, I think anybody and everybody who's watching this, anybody who does that and taps into that place will um, just know what to do. They'll know their part when you know much better, and because they'll have that kind of clarity of attention and focus that will help them. And hopefully that by explaining that helps you and anybody that may be watching this, and to do that. So I think I'm going to wrap up the video, and I think hopefully I basically explained what I was trying to say, and hopefully that helps you who may be watching this, or whoever might be watching this. And if you resonate with the message, feel free to spread it in your own way. Make your own video or share my video or talk to your friends or family or whoever. But just, do whatever you can. If everybody does that, I think that we'll be okay. I think that we can still be okay. So, if that's all I basically have to say for now. So thanks for watching. Bye.